Yeah, maybe this was.
You did.
That's beautiful. Buck is gonna get sweet, so she'll come in and just awesome. Thank you. Can we get started?
I'm thinking so too. I'm just waiting for this to get caught up and make sure it's broadcasting. I don't know if it is. I don't know why. Screen sharing.
That looks promising.
Here we go. We're on.
Thought I heard it coming from your computer.
All right. You good to go? Is that your beer?
Yeah. 2 mics, 1?
2 mics. She's got one.
You guys ready to get started? Woo! All right, grab a beer and find a seat. Let's go. I didn't mean to kill the bugs. So thank you guys all so much for being here, especially on a rainy day. How many of you guys are from CU? How many of you are students? All right, yes. How many of you are here because it's required in a class? Fewer numbers. You're gonna have a good time, I promise. So this doesn't happen without my leadership team. So my name is Tony Rosati, and this is Greg. We'll just clap for everybody tonight, because that's the kind of mood that I'm in. Where's Jen Wilson? Jen Wilson! Yes. So whenever you turn in a talk, you'll be talking to Jen. And where's Patty? Hi, everybody. I want you guys all to smile for Patty. Oh man, I was gonna ask the audience.
Forget I said anything. It's a dinosaur.
And our last person, Eric. Wave, say hi. So I think in honor of Analyze Boulder 65, yes, we have gotten together 65 times. Eric has decided that it's time to retire. It is the right age to retire. So next month is going to be his last on the leadership team. And I'm not going to be here, so I'm going to thank you for your service now, because you fucking rock. This also doesn't happen without Galvanize. We kept growing out of spaces until Galvanize, who can finally handle us. If you are new to town or new to Galvanize, they have amazing events. We're not the only cool thing in town. And they also have a data science track and a development thing, but I'm going to let Buck tell you all about it. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, so hello everyone and welcome to Galvanize. Whether this is your first time here or you've been coming to the Analyze meetup since the very beginning and you moved with them here to Galvanize. So I just wanted to thank you for giving me a moment to tell you a little bit about who Galvanize is and what we do. So Galvanize is a lot of things. We are a higher education learning center, so we do offer web development, data science, immersives, full-time and part-time courses. We are a place for members. We have a membership that you can do co-working here, and so that's what this space is, and upstairs in these rooms. And we are also an event space for awesome events like this that align with what our mission is, and spreading tech and a lot of other events here as well. If you see it on wearing a Galvanize shirt, you want to find out more about how you can get involved, we can give you Danielle's information. She'll get you on the mailing list, and you can find out more about becoming a student, becoming a mentor, or about the events that we do. So thank you so much to Tony, Greg, Eric, Jim, and Patty.
awesome how this picture is? Where does this piece of art live? It's a tattoo. It's Eric's tattoo. It's a new tattoo. See, when you leave, weird things happen. All right, so here's our lineup for tonight. First up, we have David and Justin talking about Live Trivia HQ, which is a game. Then we have Peter Foltz talking about student evaluation at scale with NLP. And not you students, you guys are good to go. Just hang out and chill. And then we have Drew Thayer talking about predicting the fall, which is predicting various types of avalanches. Okay. We love beer, and people come here for the first time because data is awesome, but also because of free beer. But we buy the beer on your donation, so if you happen to have something, throw your vote into the jar. Can somebody tell me what we're voting on today? I believe it is variance and bias. So if you're a modeler or not, pick one, and we will announce based on how much cash is in each one, which one wins. What was the last one? Python versus R. Does anybody have ideas on how that one did? Python all the way. Like, I'm an R person, and Python won 3 times the amount. I was like, oh.
That's just because they have more money.
Right, yeah, they were definitely making more money. You know, scientists, they're like postdoc salaries and stuff. All right, so put your vote in. Otherwise, I'm going to sick this foster cat after you. Or if you win, then maybe you can take the foster cat home. This is Walter. All right, so for anybody that is new, take a picture of this slide and stay in touch with us on Twitter, on Slack, on LinkedIn. We get together once a month. Most of the time, it is the first Wednesday of the month. But there's a lot of chatter and different opportunities and job announcements and articles that we share. We'd love to have you as part of the community. Awesome. Oh, shoot, there was still a phone up. All right, so this is one of my favorite parts of the night where we get to make announcements of various jobs, events, collaborations. Let's start with jobs. Whose company is hiring? Awesome. Angela, we'll start with you. Perfect. No, you're fine.
Hello, my name is Angela Zulukin. I am a data scientist at Panasonic Automotive, and we are hiring a data engineer. So a little bit about the project is the future of smart cars and smart roads is to have cars broadcasting data and having all that data come up to the cloud. Now, if you can imagine a car is broadcasting information about, say, its windshield wipers or its brakes or whatever, 10 times per second, think about how many cars around the road, that's a lot of data real fast. And so we want someone that's hungry for big data to come and work for us. And with Z, she also she's our data science intern and is her first time in Boulder. So yeah, speak to me afterwards where we're starting to do this interview, so I'll get your resume in real quick.
Woo! Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter, and we are hiring right now, looking for some Python backend engineers.
Of course it's Python.
But we also are hiring data scientists and AI researchers who have backgrounds in natural language processing or machine learning methods of a variety of sorts in R or Python or or Pearson large educational. And we have a lot of fun, do a lot of new things that help students.
Do they have to travel 75% of the time?
No, awesome. Hi, I'm Greg. As you know, I work at a company downtown Denver in the remittance business, which sends money abroad, and we're hiring for a few roles. Today I'm going to talk about mobile app engineer, Ionic. We're hiring for web analysts, Telium, Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, Document, and you are a business analyst, or know someone that's a business analyst, or
Hey guys, my name's Ben. I work for a consultancy here in town called Boulder. We're looking to hire a full stack developer. Actually, so if you're one of those folks or you know one of those folks, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
Bing, would you be comfortable posting that on my other media?
Hi, I'm Jen. I work for Automatic. We're press to get back from commerce. We're hiring a couple of data engineers, marketing data analysts, so data analysts specifically for marketing division. And then also a data analyst to work within our data division, so it's more product focused. Because you're definitely more analyst, analytically interested, not data.
It is a good time to be looking for a job.
It is. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris. I work for a company called Dassault Systèmes. They're based in France, but it's a global company, and they cater to just about every industry you can imagine. I work in the life sciences division, so we're looking for data scientists with a life sciences background. So if you can meddle in both, that's really it's really exciting. So in particular, computational chemists, computational biologists, we like those. Yeah, what do you want to know?
No, I've got something for you.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, if you go to 3ds.com, look at the careers, there's plenty of opportunity, or not a recruiter, but get you career.
Sweet.
More jobs.
Nice. Activision probably has the most fun hiring process in the world, and they're here tonight. Are you hiring my chance? Where's Spencer? Don, he just grabbed a beer and took off, didn't he? Dang it, Spencer. Oh, there we go. I just had to tease you guys.
Currently, my company has a job opening, so I'll mention that. I'm a senior data analyst. I work at Pepper we're based in DC.
She's allowed to touch it, my God. They're married.
The job position is technically listed under DC, but we set for remote workers across the board.
He works from home in bed.
So we're just looking for somebody who's really good with SQL and who can really like take business requirements, turn them into SQL more or less. So we really good with SQL because our queries are crazy. So, yeah. Oh yeah, and I'm Josh, and you should find me afterwards. It's all hanging out.
Just call him baby daddy.
Yeah. I really hope it turns out ginger.
I'm a girl now. Now I have to say she.
All right, more jobs.
Awesome. Where's our events? Who's got events coming up? Or collaborations? I know there's at least one collaboration going on. She's the only one big enough to raise her hand right now.
Yeah, I had actually mentioned this, but I wanted to remind everyone that September 15th is it's limited summit. It's Jennifer and I, so it's my first time.
Look, I've got slides for you.
Oh. Cool, yes. So I just want to let everyone know that's happening.
Awesome. Along those lines, this Saturday is also a Women of Denver quarterly party, and it's open to all business people, not just tech. But lady coders, if you're a developer, you've definitely heard of them. Yes.
Denver Startup Week.
Denver Startup Week. Holy moly. Are you talking?
No, I'm not talking, but I just read about today. So it's on the 21st, I think. I didn't read all the details on it, but Denver Startup Week, it'll pop right up on Google. They have several tracks. Engineering, data science, both is one of their newest ones, I think. There's probably a bunch of others too. Besides that, design. Yeah, check it out. It should be a good one.
If you're new to town, Denver Startup Week is amazing. It's a little more distributed than Boulder Startup Week, which happens up here in May, but awesome, awesome.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin. I teach a data technology class to high schoolers in minority at-risk youth school in Denver, called Denver Street School. And we're always looking for speakers or content. We want to test drive some content with some high schoolers. We'd love to get anything for our curriculum. So appreciate it.
Awesome. How long do the talks have to be or the classes?
Our class is an hour, and in 20 minutes. Their attention span is vastly shorter.
Hey, we've got 5 minutes here, I don't know.
Yeah, anything's great. Love to get people presenting like their career path or different data, all kinds of stuff. So, keep talking.
Awesome. Any other announcements before we bring up Justin and Dave to do the count? What's that? We got a lot of people here tonight, so you're just gonna have to stay and network. Is your boss here tonight? Is that why you said no? All right, without further ado, let's find out about HQ Trivia with Justin and David. Two mics?
Two? You need both mics? We just pass.
You could have two.
Does this work? Yes. Okay.
One mic?
One mic is
Patty
fine.
tends to like to hold
I
on
broke
to
it.
the mic.
I already broke it. How do I unbreak it? Tony, I broke it already.
Good thing we have right here.
Thank you, A.B. Gray. You're welcome.
All right, hey, my name is Justin Melnick, and I'm here with Dave Belmont for our HQ Trivia project. We are both freelance data scientists from Denver, Colorado. We know each other from a Georgia Tech Master's of Data Science, Master's of Science Analytics program we're both in right now. So we're here to talk about HQ. HQ, how many of you have the HQ app or have had it? Raise your hands.
Woo!
Awesome. How many of you have one HQ? One person, how much did you win? $25, that's really good. That's the highest I've ever heard from anyone, so that's great. So we'll talk a little about that too. That's awesome. So HQ, for those of you who don't know, is a free app you can download in the App Store. There's money to be won. It is a single elimination 12, 15 question game. And if you make it to the end, you split the pot. You've got 10 seconds to answer. It's all live. It's a new concept technology-wise as of about December when it was popularized last year. So we started collecting data on it in December and put some stuff out online. We got picked up by the Washington Post. We worked with them on a D3 graphical story that came out in March. And beyond that, we got featured in the Money magazine for a few articles on when's the best time to play HQ, or how do I win a bunch of money in HQ, and some other stuff like that. We also presented to Google, Amazon, and Netflix in LA last month on some of our findings for an entertainment analytics conference. Make sure I cover all that. Yeah, so we have an exclusive third-party data set. We will talk about how we got the data and kind of what made us unique, and share the analytics on our website, hqinsiders.com. So yeah, Dave will talk about data collection.
So when we first started, Justin was watching the games and then recording them in a Google Sheets. So that was our first method in the very beginning, but that's not scalable. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of time. So the next thing we started looking into was like OCR with test track, machine learning to quickly read the images of the game, but that was inaccurate. So the last thing we finally went to and settled on was we had an API kind of back end that sends the questions and answers and all the other data points to the app on the phone. We were able to hijack that and put it into a database, but I think you got the clicker, so we have to go next. Okay, so this is kind of our data pipeline. So we use Python to get all the information from their API. We get questions, answers, viewer accounts, player accounts, chat logs, winners, and categories. We put that into a SQLite database where we do basic data cleaning, very basic stuff like removing dollar signs, dealing with missing data, and then to do the real work, we use R, which is far superior to Python. This is where we do our analytics, modeling, and visualization. All the plots in this presentation are from Mars. So here's some basic insights, distribution of winners each game. So on the bottom, we have the winning players, and then the game count on the y-axis, but the majority is between 0 and 1,000 people in the game. And then winners over time, one thing that we notice is the game is getting easier over time. So if you started in the very beginning, you'd see people win like thousands of dollars. It's definitely possible, but now there's so many winners, some people are coming away with a few cents per game. So it's definitely getting easier. And then you can also see on the left side, we have average correct percent by question and game. It slightly raised, there's a few spikes in there, and then the average winning amount over time. So average winnings is going down over time. So some of the reasons we think that's happening is because they have Discord chats on servers. So people get the answers out. There's a lot of bots. People have figured out the API in the back end where they use OCR to figure out answers very easily. And then question categories. What are the most asked questions? The top 3 is educational, history, food, and drink. That's going to compose 40% of the questions that are asked. The top 10 categories that you see in here are 70% of the questions that are asked. But the bottom 3, I think math is the least asked question. I think it was maybe asked once in one game. And then what question categories have the easiest questions? So science, culture, and games. The percentages next to these, 88% of people get science right, 85% people get culture, and 85% get games. The hardest categories are fashion, movies, and geography. So apparently people don't know where things are in the world, which made sense to me, but that those are the breakout of the categories there.
All right, so for my magazine, they asked when's the best time to play HQ. There's some levers there, so people are playing, they stay on less, and there's less money to be won during the day. When you lose, you go back to your office, you go back to your desk. At night, people stay longer, and they tend to last longer, and so it's harder to win, but there's more money to win. That's kind of the main story here on the slide. Evening gives some higher price spots, but it's hard to win money. And then some quick responsiveness on the chat room, chat logs. Fox News asked us to give them some insights, and like, look like a giant dumpster fire, but there was some stuff. Like people were throwing chats down. There's a ton of crap in there. But the top 4 words were birthday, glitch, love, and Scott, who's the host. And so it's interesting here to take that glitch, even though it was tough thing to get up to 2 million current users playing a live stream broadcast game on their phones, which is a pretty major technical advancement. But they did get the hang of it. And then this is cool too. During Elmo's game, the word dad came up like, really strongly, and so HQ's marketing team picked up on that and had Elmo dad for the users. And lastly, this was the most interesting thing for people at the conference, was what's going to happen in HQ. So we like this graph here that shows the viewership over time is starting to drop a little bit. However, there's sort of a stock split thing happening because they add a bunch of games. So you saw 1 game a night, now they have 3 games a night, so the average viewership is split out. So that's not a great graph on the left, after June, but on the right side, we've got our current, our average viewers of our website up next to the viewers, the trends, interests over time. And so we're still seeing a little bit of decline, but we'll kind of wait and see. It's up to you to make the decision whether HQ is going to make it or not. And also their year-over-year is coming. August 26th is when they had the 1-year anniversary. So we're really interested to see once that ramp-up point ends, what's it going to look like year-over-year for them next holiday season. So here's our info. If you have any questions, and thanks so much for having us. And any questions now?
I'm going to take one of yours so that I can actually.
Yeah.
Questions? We're brutal. We make the freshman lady run around.
Was there a data missing from April and May, or what happened there?
So that's when we were experimenting with the OCR and kind of in their transition. So some logs, we do have that gap, and some we don't. That's where we were changing.
Was there a spike after the Super Bowl ad?
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 million concurrent users was right around mid-February here, and so one of these spikes in the Super Bowl, and it was definitely an impact for them, and that was one of their highest prize spots too. Yes.
The insights slide, they have easy and hard questions. Wow, how do you measure easy and how do you measure hard? What's the scale?
Is it here? Correct question?
The easiest and hardest.
So all we're doing is the number correct. Percent correct from one question to the next. And so one thing that's kind of dirty in that data is when you get an extra life. We got some of our data has that. We start picking up the extra life on the API. Before we had the API access, we were just kind of like guessing it. Who was getting extra lives?
You noted with the decline of users and sessions, it was kind of up to the audience to see whether it should move to online. Besides that, do you have any plans to boost recurring users and sessions and to acquire, to get new users?
Like what we suggest to get the users on board?
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
are plans besides just looking up?
I think that, I have an opinion. I think that there's not enough, there's a really interesting Reddit post, the HQ Trivia Reddit subreddit, about like what was your killing point? Like, when did you stop playing the game? People talk about, they say Scott talks too much, and there's too much advertising, and I wasn't winning enough money, it wasn't keeping me interested. And so I think that they should have created a larger incentive for people to keep playing even if they're not winning. So I wanted to see more analytics. I wanted to see how good am I at this category? Can I earn a badge if I get a certain difficulty correct? Can you give me a quality score based on like, I got this right, but this percentage of people got it wrong? But they didn't really do any of that. I think a lot of it was putting out flyers and that kind of thing. You go. Sure.
But I think a big motivation would be how to improve.
How can they giving feedback to the users and how they can improve? Yeah, that's great.
Did you model any of that? Like factors that might change the trend line beyond today?
No.
So we did look at, we did model for a company, a game company, Yukon Games, and kind of, they asked similar questions. So we looked at like host, how does the host affect viewership? But at the end of the day, none of those factors were statistically significant. So my thing is, the only reason people play the game is for money. Justin and I differ on this. I think if people are winning a lot of money, you get a lot of players. We have a lot of other analysis that kind of shows that, but a lot of the stuff we looked at was not statistically significant. It's true.
So what's the mix between text and audio and visual content that's being asked about and these stats on the responses are for mix of that and user engagement, that more visual content, that more audio content, yes, a song, yes,
I think I have something on that.
Yeah.
I was impressed with when they went to their first sponsored game and they had Jurassic Park. What was it? Yeah, it was a movie of some kind, and they were doing like these commercials in between, and I was impressed with how the engagement stayed up, even though they had a lot of breaks visually. We didn't do any modeling specifically on that, but I would say that the viewers have a higher tolerance for visual breaks than I would have expected, and some of that vamping that happens. So that's pretty much what we have.
Is there any user segmentation? You said they went to 3 games kind of concurrent. You talked about badges where, you know, the way that Overwatch kind of targets your level to give you a 50-50 win rate. Do they segment to say, you know, you're a gold user, so you get to play in a better game where there's fewer people, and I'm a noob, so I gotta go in with everybody? Anything?
So we did see a feature that they beta tested and then took back on badges. And so I think they are concurrent badges at some point, maybe, but it didn't get rolled out. And so the only thing we saw was the segmentation of West Coast users. So they created this additional games for the West Coast. They felt like the timing was good for them. A lot of people get positive feedback to that. But we don't have any like their CRM data or any user data, which is where you get all that information a lot.
Is there one more question? I know we were making our way to that. All right, thank you guys so much.
All right, up next is Peter Wolf.
Gotta have that control.
I know, we've got to figure out how to use it too. So I'm going to talk about sort of philosophy of data that within our company we like to treat text as data. And for this, what I'm really focused on one kind of analyzing text, and that is how do we grade an essay. And I'm Peter Foltz. I manage a group in Pearson's AI and product solutions, mostly scientists, learning scientists, AI researchers. I'm also a research professor at the University of Colorado as well. And because I've been a professor, I know a lot about writing and assigning writing. And if you go out and you talk to teachers, you'll find out that teachers want students to write more. It's not that they just want them to learn how to write. They want them to use writing because it's a good way to teach students how to do critical thinking. It's a good way for them to learn various job and technical knowledge and skills. And it's a great way to learn how to communicate ideas to each other. So teachers want to do that. But on the other hand, teachers don't have time to assign and score writing. So I was a professor and I taught large intro psychology courses with 200 students. The last thing I would do would want to come back on a Friday with a 200 papers and have to grade them over the weekend and then in the back. The problem is that for students, if I as a student hand in a paper and then the teacher takes a week to grade it, what does the student do when they get the grade back? Look at it. They ignore the comments, all they do is look at the numbers, stick it in their folder, go away. So it didn't have any effect for learning because it took a week for them to get feedback. So the problem is we need to make it more efficient for teachers and we need to get students to have immediate feedback. So how do we do that? Well, we do it through the magic of AI. And I'm not going to go through all the details here, but what we've done is to develop technology to be able to infer human scoring behavior, infer what the teacher's doing. So think about this. Teachers assign an essay. Students start all writing to it. It's all collected online. The computer then asks the teacher to start grading the essays. Over time, the computer starts looking at the features that the teacher uses to grade those essays, looks at the grades, looks at the student's essays and says, I think I know what you're doing in order to grade the essay. And that's essentially what we're doing. We take essays, we break them down into hundreds of different language features. We're analyzing both the quality of the student writing, but also the content. What are they talking about? What are they saying? What topics are they talking about? What is it covering? Is it well organized? And so the machine learning approach is learning to associate what a student says to what a teacher does in terms of grades and feedback. And it works. So there's two ways to show that it works. One way is I'll show sort of how it works, and I'll give some examples, and then I'll also show how well it works. So how it works. We're doing scoring right now for anyone ranging from grade school through high school, college, as well as also professional certification. Here's an example of an application that's used in grade school up through high school. A student might be asked a question like, should cameras be used in the classroom? Is it an invasion of privacy, or does it improve student safety? They have to take a stand. They're given a blank page. They have to write a draft there. So a student writes a draft here. They can check their spelling, grammar, and other things, but they can also click Get Feedback. It tells them they have 6 drafts left there, 6 attempts to get feedback. They click Get Feedback, that's sent back to our servers, and in about a second, that is scored, and they get scores back on the overall quality of their essay, task and focus, development of ideas, the organization, language and style, and use of convention, so like grammar and mechanics on it. Along with those grades, they're also given hints of how to improve or what they need to learn to improve that. So like if they're doing poorly on development of ideas, they can click on Learn, and they'll get more information about development of ideas. They say, well, okay, I'm not doing that well on task and focus, they might click on Improve, and they'll get more information. How do you improve your essay? How do you improve your writing? So they'll look at that, they'll read it, they'll go back, and they'll revise their essay. Then they can click Get Feedback, and they can get their grades back this time. What we find is in the space of about 1 hour, students will write 6 drafts of an essay getting feedback and iterating very quickly. And at the same time, teachers are getting lots of data, real-time data about how students are performing, so we know all the problems the students are having. So does it work? we always look at how well does this agree between the human scores and computers. So before we build any of these models, we look at the agreement there. What we find is that humans will agree with each other, so two teachers will agree with each other on scores about as often as the computer will agree with any teacher. So the computer doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be as good as a human. So what's the moral of all this? The moral is we're taking text and we're using that text. We're using student essays as data here. We collect live student writing. We take the actions of teacher scoring there. We then apply NLP and machine learning to it. And from that, we can build automated scoring and feedback systems. We're doing it at scale right now. We're scoring tens of millions of essays a year, all sorts of different kinds of essays there. But it's important to always know that it's working. We're always checking the accuracy. We're verifying against instructor scores to make sure that it's always as accurate there. But the key thing is students like it, and we do a lot of studies, and not only do they like it, but they're learning better because they use it. Questions?
That was really interesting. I'm curious about how writing style is affected as a outcome. So if you look at how students' writing ends up after the evaluation and the iterative process takes place, I guess my thinking is, are all students going to end up writing more similarly because of this? Like, will their writing become more canned by fitting the algorithm and what it thinks is good writing? Will there be less diversity in terms of the ideas and the direction?
We've looked at this a lot because this question comes up a lot. The answer so far as we found is no, and because it's not just looking at scoring writing up to one standard. If you train a system where you have hundreds of essays where teachers have said, these are all good examples of good essays, then you're trying to move them in lots of different directions there. So there's not just one gold standard, there are many gold standards of what good writing is. And there's even more standards of what poor writing is. And so essentially what we're doing is seeing how we can sort of move you into one of those directions. Will it capture every possible way? Probably not. But for a lot of the students who are doing developmental writing, the key is we just want to get them up that learning curve, and we're not worrying about students who are going to be writing the next New Yorker article or something. We just want to get them so they can think about the basics.
Awesome, been there, done that, and pursue this. So once you get your model trained, can you run it in generative mode and generate a lot of good fake essays?
Actually not, it doesn't really work backwards. But we often get asked this question about can you use computers to try to fake the essay system? And you could if you had access to try lots of different things. But one of the things we do also is to put on a lot of different cheat detectors on there, because we have students who try things or lard it with big words or copy and paste things or bring things in. So we're also always building sets of detectors there that look for very unusual things. And the nice thing about this is that in the system that I just showed, what happens is it just flags that essay since the teacher says you better look at it. And we always have some level of a confidence score that says, I'm not confident in scoring this, so a human better score it. So we can always do that. But so yeah, we're always looking out for those kinds of things.
Did you guys develop the natural language processor yourselves, or is that something that out there for others?
We were using a lot of different techniques, but most of them are fairly standard off the shelf, but a wide combination of them. Some of the stuff we've developed, a lot of it is off the shelf.
First of all, this is amazing. I wish I had this in high school. If you have a bunch of students that are going along the same prompt and they're all given basically the same guidelines, how do you avoid things like plagiarism?
What we'll see is the essays do end up looking fairly similar, but oftentimes, even if you get students with these guidelines, they will tend to write essays that are different enough from each other that we can detect that they're different. But we do have plagiarism detections in there that are looking, and usually plagiarism happens because you see set words that all go together.
And that tends to be the plagiarism, whereas the ideas may be the same, but it's the expression of the ideas that can't be the same. So we're always looking for that. We might say they have the same ideas, but they express it differently, so it's not plagiarism. But if we see real similar expression, we flag it.
Hi, I was noticing that part where students see where they may not have done so well in a certain category, they click on something and learn more about that. I'm having a hard time imagining how that speaks to what they actually wrote about. Could you elaborate on an example of that?
Sure, it's customized to the score. So if a student scores 2 on ideas, it will then give feedback about how to improve ideas. But it is still fairly generic in that it's not about that specific essay. It's generally about how do you improve your writing or expression of ideas. And that's actually an area where we've gotten a lot of feedback. Teachers want that to actually be better, and we're actually doing research and some development now, trying to improve that approach so we can say, look, your ideas are weak here, or your argument doesn't match your evidence, let's do that. So that's research right now.
Thanks, Ms. Peter. The question on length in the beginning, how does the algorithm address length, and does it reward effective communication that happens more concisely?
So yeah, we're actually very sensitive about length because it is one of those things that students who write more tend to get better scores. As a matter of fact, if you look at almost all those essay sets, the correlation between word count and essay score the teachers give is usually about 0.6 to 0.7. So a lot of the variance is carried by length because smart kids know more, they write more. But what we do is we don't use anything that count the length, but what we do look at is things that look at the amount of content and the amount of relevant content in there, which is related to length, but won't be spoofed by just writing more. It does. We have sort of optimal lengths, and because machine learning is trained on sets of essays, it also sort of knows where the sweet spot is, and also looks at some things about the right density of ideas for the length. So we look at some aspects like that.
Could this system pick up signals like someone's birth language if they didn't speak English primarily as programmed?
Yeah, we're actually doing some work. A lot of stuff we do actually is for English language learners, and we're doing some things where we detect different grammatical constructions that might tell you your birth language and give slightly different feedback. So like for correcting grammar, and we see like from Slavic languages, we drop determiners, it might say, oh, we need to teach you this. So we're doing some things right now. It's not in the product, but it's in the research side of detecting this.
Got 3 more questions.
What does it look like when you score letters from New York or Cambridge Fair, etc.?
Yeah, if you score really good writing, all of these are trained on specific writing prompts. And so it's scoring on your writing on that particular prompt. We've had cases where I once put up a web app with an essay where it was supposed to write an essay. You're supposed to write an essay for one of my psychology classes I was teaching, and some reporter put in the Gettysburg Address and it got a really bad grade. They said, this is terrible because it said that Lincoln's not a good writer. And I said, Lincoln didn't know anything about that topic in psychology. So usually what it will do with a really good writer is it will detect and say, this looks highly unusual for what I've been trained on, so I won't grade it.
Do you have topics that must have been covered by writers in the popular press?
Yeah. Yeah, but for a lot of those, when you see a professional writer, the structure and choice of language often looks so different than what an 8th grader writes that it will tend to flag it and just say, I don't think I've seen anything like this before.
And our last one.
Have you looked longitudinally at individual students over time?
If I had more time, I've got this great slide of looking at growth over time, and we had a whole state using that program we had. So we had hundreds of thousands of students writing every week using it, and we can look at growth of writing over time and get these beautiful curves. And that's another much longer topic, but it's cool stuff.
So we'll see you in the next couple of months. We have another talk. All right. Thank you guys for being patient. Great question. Up next, we have Drew Thayer talking about Avalanche.
Well, I hope to teach you something about an empirical approach to avalanche prediction with machine learning done in Python. So my interest in avalanches came from the lens of studying natural systems. I was a geologist that worked for the U.S. Geologic Survey as a geophysicist. I did the galvanized data science immersive program last spring, so this was my capstone project for that course. I currently work as a Python engineer for a company that does computer vision problems. And being last spring, I was backcountry skiing a lot. I was reading avalanche reports. I was thinking about snowpack and weather and wanted to take a look at the data myself to see how hard it is to get a signal out of it. So the Colorado Avalanche Information Center not only provides daily avalanche forecasts, but they have a database going back a few decades of all observed avalanches. So these are all events that someone has reported in, like either their own people or called in or reported on their website. So for this modeling study, I'm looking at avalanches in the zone around Aspen, Colorado. And I'm going to exclude really small avalanches. These are D2 or greater, that they can bury a small car, they can bury or kill a person. Significant from a safety standpoint. We have to look at how frequent they are and how variable the frequency is. There can be as little as none or as many as 25 observed avalanches in the Aspen area, and it changes on a variety of factors. But the good thing is it's not random. We know two main domains of avalanches. There are slab avalanches that happen more in the winter. There are slabs that happen in the spring. We know that wind slabs that create those avalanches, they're associated with sustained winds, cold temperatures. We know that snowpack of a lot of snowfall, especially if it's dense, can trigger both types of avalanches. And we know that wet avalanches are primarily triggered by sustained warm temperatures, both at night and during the day. I wanted to see if I could augment the features for this model with some knowledge about the likelihood of one type or another of avalanche for any given day of the year. So I modeled that probability as a Gaussian kernel density estimation, which is just a function of the day of the year for each day. And I can feed that in along with the other inputs into the model. So snowpack characteristics come from the SNOWTEL network, which is distributed around the state. I can get wind speeds from some of the regional reports. Data from the last couple of days to look at what's happening in the storm cycle from the IC model probabilities and feeding them into a pair of gradient boosting classifier models. So these are each going to predict a probability of their respective type of avalanche. You can sum those for a probability for the day. This is how the model did on unseen data. So this is after training on 6 seasons. It's a bit of a confusing plot. So what's going on here is every day that there was an avalanche, there's an orange bar going to the top. And then the model's predicted probabilities are in purple, if it looks purple to you, and green. It's good to note that the predicted slab avalanches are more in the winter and the wet avalanches are more in the spring, as we would expect. I optimized this model for recall. So it has a 91% recall. Most days when an event happened, the model did capture or predict that event would happen. The trade-off is that there are some false positives in the model these days when there weren't any avalanches, but the model made a high prediction. And doing the bimodal model achieved a better recall than a single model, so that was encouraging too. I wanted to see, since this is a purely empirical approach, I wanted to see if it has anything to do with the physical processes that we know are behind these avalanches. So these are rankings of the features that were most important in training the two models, I'm just going to point out a couple that are interesting. They have generally the same pattern. There's features related to date in the storm cycle, and features related to temperature, and then features related to wind speed as less important. So this max temperature feature, that's just the max temperature day, is important and a positive relationship to wet slides predictions, which make sense. They happen when it's really hot. It was also important for the slab model, but feature dependence showed that was an inverse relationship. So that also makes sense with the physical understanding. This snow 4-day feature is the amount of loading over the last 4 days. That was important in the slab model, which makes sense. And then this settle feature is the amount that the snow height has settled in the last 24 hours, which we know is something that happens with rapid melting and consolidation in the spring, which leads to wet slides. So these feature dependencies give me some confidence that at least the empirical approach has something to do with physics, and I think it could it'd be interesting to explore it further. Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Questions? Right next to you.
So I'm interested in the weather data, because I've gone on the Colorado Avalanche Information Center's website, and I haven't been able to find weather data that goes back more than like a year or two. So, were you able to find data that went all the way back to, I think you started in like 2011? Or
Yeah, I got that from various NOAA sources. So not through the CAIC. So I had to date match them.
I'd be interested in finding.
Cool.
I was curious if there's any uncertainty in the classification of wet versus slab, because you said people just call it in, right? Is it wrong? Is there some noise in there?
There's definitely some noise, and I'm not sure what it is. I mean, there's some serious problems with this that all the events are human reported, because they are. I took a look at some of the timing. They're biased towards weekends. They're biased towards popular areas. You
But
know,
more
so
specifically, are people good? Like, if they call it a wet avalanche, is that a clear?
that's a pretty clear choice, and I would think that anyone who nerds out enough to report it to the CAIC would know. They look really, really different. Yeah.
Kind of on the same lines, but if I recall, there's a lot of avalanches that are reported kind of natural. People see them and they report them in. So did you, when you were looking at your 80% like false positives or something, being able to normalize out whether it was triggered by a skier, snowmobile, whatever, versus just seen and natural caused? Could that be?
Yeah, so surprisingly, that field in the historical data was not filled in nearly as much. You would think that'd be like a really evident thing from the event, but that would probably make a big difference. I talked to some people at the CAIC after doing this project, and they said maybe an empirical approach would be useful for specifically like natural avalanches, and probably more the wet slides, because they're a pretty direct result of climate factors. Like if it's really hot in May, there's going to be wet slides. The slab avalanches have such like a, I guess like a time aggregate factor. It's harder to.
Okay, yeah, because I was just thinking with the personal reporting of people triggering them, there is that factor where you hope a lot of people realize, oh, all of those weather conditions you listed are bad enough that I'm not going to go out, so they end up causing less. So
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the same reason. Like, hopefully, there's less reporting during high danger days anyway. Not always.
You have one last question?
Did you try to correlate anything with satellite data to soften that effect of human reporting? For slides and happen from a satellite perspective?
I mean, that,
Too random.
that would be an awesome, maybe like dissertation. But I mean, if you could get, you know, that would solve like the spatial distribution problem. If you could actually get data for large areas of the state's mountains, then you could really have like a strong database.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Well, at Analyze Boulder, we are all about networking. So for the next, what, 45 minutes? Oops, half an hour.
What about this?
35 minutes. Oh yeah, that's what we're doing. Next 35 minutes, we get to network. What I'd like to do is give you some sort of icebreaker so that you already have a question to ask somebody that you don't already know. So shameless plug, this is a screenshot of my LinkedIn. And what I have done is put a banner image right there that says something about the work I do and hopefully puts forward some sort of professionalism of me speaking and teaching and my horrible, horrible drawings of star people in line. So, so my very, very light and easy icebreaker tonight is, do you have a custom image on your LinkedIn banner? What is it? What does it say about you? And hopefully that will make people bring out their phones, chit chat with each other, add each other on LinkedIn, and have as much beer as we have left, though it's probably not that much. Thank you guys so much.
6 beers.
Yeah.
Myself, I didn't know you were going to do the make 'em guess. Gonna make 'em guess. I was just like, look, guys. Go. See. See it. No. She had a plan. And I messed it up because
At one point, I was like, break down the only people that not asked a question.
yeah,
So it's really hard to find the best one.
and for the last one, it's I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go there because you've already done this.
So interesting tonight, people were really restless tonight. And like that whole center area, so yeah, these guys are students, but that whole student section.
Yeah. They were taking notes. Yeah.
First level.
And all the ones in the back had laptops. I'm doing the same thing. So it's like they were actually taking photographs. Like you said, that makes sense. I know I did that before. I was like, no. This is a player row. Not to be Vegas. It's 50-50 either way. Somebody did guess dinosaur.
It wasn't possible.
So our pipeline itself so yeah, for us, see, Steve Defoe. Success. I am something. I serve. I sense of life. We touched her. We touched her. We touched her. We touched her. Our grandpa watched it all night. We watched it all night. We grew up inside. We saw once our grandpa died. She didn't seem to care. She smoked in her room, colored her hair. I was ashamed. 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 I was ashamed.
Yeah.